last time we spoke was early December. A fair bit of water's gone under the bridge since then.
It's a long time since then. I mean, what have we got? We've got a new Prime Minister. Who would have expected that late last year? We've got an election set for this year. The date's down. We've got a new president inaugurated and all of the things that flow from that. So for the news junkies out there, there's quite a lot going on.
Plus stir in North Korea.
Well, that's the sort of thing that's just hit. I don't know if you saw the wires yesterday, but the North Koreans tested a ballistic missile. Shinzo Abe just happened to be visiting Donald Trump, so the two of them are out from the Mar-a-Lago golf club lambasting the Koreans. So it's a sort of, it could be quite a dangerous world, but hopefully the rhetoric is the one thing that stepped up and we won't actually see it turning into any sort of solid action. But it's a worry sometimes.
Post-truth politics is one of your catchphrases.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be sort of growing out of the Brexit thing. We are giving Brussels 350 million a day and that would be better spent on the health service. Complete nonsense. But it's on the side of a bus, and so a lot of people believe it. The idea in North America that there's massive threat coming from half a dozen, 7 or so particular nation states, so we need to do more at the borders. It's sort of, it's how I feel that matters more than what the facts say. But I've got a very firm view that if you don't grasp reality, very soon reality is going to grasp you. And so it's a suck it up, work on the facts, and don't go to the feelings. The feelings are the things that I might feel that this is a problem, but if the facts don't stack up, all my actions based on the feelings will be wrong, and wrong actions in the face of reality. Reality is going to bite.
Is the media responsible for that?
Some of that. I mean, if you look through the media now, it's many different channels, many different sorts of media, right from the citizen journalism through to the right-hand side of politics, the left of politics, this biased media, the middle that's the mainstream. If you only read from one set of sources, you end up sitting in that sort of echo chamber. And we all like to hear what we already believed. It's called confirmation bias. And if people tell us the sort of things we like to hear, we're much more comfortable than when we have our sort of possibly ill-founded beliefs challenged from a different viewpoint. So yes, the media, but yes, the consumer of the media. We all have a responsibility to be balanced. So if you read the right-wing press, every now and again, read the left-wing press and vice versa.
Very common.
Get some
balance
contrast, get some balance in the thing.
Yeah. Trump policies.
Yeah, well, we're not quite sure what they're going to be. Markets have responded generally positively to Trump. Trump's making some noises that are pro-business, but you know, when things are crazy, it's sometimes difficult to sort of pick it out. There's talk now about the tremendous tax policy. Well, we wait and we see. I think it's probably oversold like a number of things. But a new president doing things in a new way might offer new leadership. I think the things we can see is that the multilateral leadership that the US has basically brought to the world since the Second World War is probably going to go much more to bilateral, because you can do a deal. You and I can do a deal. Not a problem. You know, the art of the deal, we can do a deal. But if there's 6 of us around the table, all with slightly different competing interests, starts to be more difficult. It becomes more bureaucratic. And so these multilateral deals tend to be negotiated by officials. They aren't the sort of hero leader making decisions and driving it through, the sort of art of the deal type of thing that Trump sort of champions. So multilateral agreements are don't actually suit the personality of somebody who wants to do a deal.
So what's that going to do to trade with New Zealand?
Probably won't have a lot of impact. Trade into North America from New Zealand's been sort of moderately difficult for a long time. We don't really have a free trade agreement with the US, and the US and Japan were the two wins, if you like, that would have come out of the TPP for New Zealand. It's very difficult for New Zealand to get a structural deal with big economies, and so shirt-tailing that in with a number of smaller economies with the US and Japan involved, really good, particularly for agricultural access. You know, agricultural access in Japan are sort of just have never sat together. The Japanese have protected their farmers. Equally, the US has done its best to protect its farmers. So agriculture the weight in New Zealand exports. So it's something of a challenge.
People are using the word pirates now.
Well, I haven't seen it used as much as I thought it would, because you can actually see this. We've got the family business now in the White House, and so we run the world to suit the family business. It's very hard when your name is on the door, Trump, not to have a vested interest unless you've sold it all down. Now, I'm visiting you, you're a state representative from some state in the world, and I've got difficulties with a Trump hotel or branded Trump hotel in your jurisdiction. It's very hard for you not to sort of try to help me, or it's very hard for me not to try and pursue. Whilst you're still identified with, it's very hard to step back. So that conflict of interest problem's there. So you see some quite common behaviours, shall we say, out of the Kremlin and now out of the White House, which is basically political office enriching the members of that political office.
NAFTA, TPP.
That's basically NAFTA's on the table to renegotiate. TPP's off the table. TTIP, which is the equivalent for TPP in the Pacific for the transatlantic, it's off the table. We got Theresa May visiting the White House, sucking it up with Trump to try and give the Brexit solution for the UK. So there's lots and lots of this more bilateral behaviour going on that I just mentioned than the multilateral stuff, because that's the hero negotiator opportunity.
Let's come home, Reserve Bank.
Well, the Reserve Bank, you know, water under the bridge. Wheeler's not going to go for a second term. That means that the change is going to be very close to the election, which does mean that government has announced it's not going to be making any changes to the toolbox. So put away the debt to income ratios that have been talked about as another tool until after the election, because it might be a new governor, it might be a new government, so we can't play around beforehand. But the problem is new tools are required to deal with the problem in the housing market. Probably the housing market is the major issue that's going to confront both sides of politics in New Zealand, and it's really growing around the world. Australia, UK, housing is an issue.
And inflation?
Well, that's where I probably differ a lot from the mainstream. I see government running surplus as not necessarily a positive thing for growth. I see governments running surplus driving private debt, higher levels of private debt, because you and I don't borrow money unless we're going to spend it, means lower growth. Lower growth means lower aggregate demand. Lower aggregate demand means lower inflation. So inflation simply isn't out there, and the level of borrowing now, any movement in interest rates is going to be negative for aggregate growth. So I don't really see that the inflation dragon is out there. Mainstream takes a different view, my own view, and I'll put a link up for people to watch an interesting lecture by an economist out of the UK. Debt is the thing private debt is the problem that's keeping the lid on inflation, and until we all deleverage, inflation dragon's dead.
So basically everything's on hold until after September.
As far as interest rates go, everything is on hold for the next couple of years. As far as new tools in the toolbox, nothing's going to change until after the election.
John, thank you very much indeed.